Hi everybody, this is Amritansh and welcome to Platonic. In this video, I'll tell you what helped me to score very high marks, 162 marks in paper 1 of political science, and this you can use to score very high marks overall in your optional. Okay? So few things I wanted to tell you, and before even starting to just say about the high marks, I'll just tell you every year is different. Okay? There are some years when you get very high marks, but then there are some years when there is a slight moderation which happens. I'll tell you different years. For example, if you see the year of 2022, okay, people have gotten very high marks, 300, 310, 320 even. Okay, if you see the rank one, she had scored very good marks in optional, that is political science. But then there are some years when relatively your optional will not do as well. Okay, so it can be, but then again, because this is relative, तो हमें इतना घबराने की बात नहीं है. ठीक है. Again, when I say that, for example, in 2019 also it was a low scoring year. Very few people, in fact, the top rankers also could only score around 240, 250 marks. Okay, but so this is how it is sometimes. That said, what can we do to ensure कि हम लोग relative भी, let's say even if you're competing within your optional, how what things can you do to score very high marks? Okay, so let's start. Number one, that you have to be very good in choosing your questions. Okay. Now this choice you also have to exercise while doing essay. In essay, you have to write out of 8 essays, only two. Many times it happens that the poor choice actually affects you. Same here. Out of 8 questions, you have to choose only five. And again, it depends whether your section A is strong or section B is strong. Again, that is also true for paper 2. Okay. So while now, if you've given a lot of tests and if you've seen a lot of previous year questions, you would know, आपको पता होगा strengths क्या है, weakness क्या है. तो पहली बात तो go for your strengths. ठीक है. Don't go by the notion कि हाँ, if the topper is saying 20, sorry, paper 1 section A में they got higher marks, so I should do that. If you're strong in paper 1 section B, go for that. Okay. In my case, both paper 1 section A and paper 2 section A were my stronger areas, right? So जो मेरा strong area था मैंने हमेशा वही attempt करा है. So that always helped me. But I would also say that is something you should follow. So number one, your choice is the thing which is going to determine number one, right? Second is, ideally you should be attempting 15 markers, but the 10 markers, because everybody has to attempt them, okay, these are compulsory in both the sections. I will say 10 markers को बहुत अच्छे से attempt करो. Okay. In my case, I used to fill both the pages and my font is relatively okay. So I think even though they asked me to write 150 words, I somehow wrote around 160 to 170 words in those cases. I try to write it very legible because वो मैं starting में लिखता था, है ना? And this I also have felt because sometimes when I get a lot of copies, etc. to check, when I see the 10 markers, because that is what I see initially. So it is said no, the first impression is last impression. So I think that kind of thing also helps. So if you write your initial 10 markers really well, it will help you. Second, when you have blocks of 50 marks, 20, 15, 15, उसमें कोशिश करो 20 मार्कर में भी जो वो अटेम्प्ट करो in which you are the best. Okay, because of course there can be a case when in आपको 20 वाला आता है, 15 वाला आता है, ठीक है, पर किसी में सिर्फ 15 ही आते हैं, राइट? So you have to make that choice ki comparatively maximum marks in which section I can get, and you have to be smart about it. Okay, when I used to attempt the paper, I used to devote at least 5 to 7 minutes in choosing कि मेरे को करना कौन सा है and in which themes do I know. Sometimes the moment I see neoliberalism or let's say Rawls, Ambedkar, I am jumped to write. Avoid that. बहुत बार क्या होगा, क्वेश्चन में बहुत नुआंस्ड चीज पूछ ली होगी. लेट्स से इफ द क्वेश्चन इज राइट डाउन द क्रिटिसिज्म्स ऑफ नियो लिबरल थ्योरी ऑफ स्टेट, वो 20 मार्क्स का है. आपने न्यू लिबरल देखा, आपको लगा अरे मेरे को आता है पूरा. But what if can you write so much about the criticism? Of course, if the question is on criticism, you have to introduce the theory, you have to mention the proponents, and then you have to criticize this, and then again you have to, let's say, follow along, right? तो हमेशा देखना, don't jump into writing. Okay, so that is one. And again, when I say follow these things, so third most important point is have a structure. Okay. And for that, the best thing is, for example, I've read a lot of NCRTs, I've read a lot of books, especially for political science. वहाँ पे एक structure होता है. If let's say a question is asked on a theory of a state, okay, or let's say Rawls or any of the thinkers, they will introduce the theory, okay, they will tell the proponents of the theory, then the main features of the theory, then they will also criticize the theory, and then they will have a conclusion about it. Okay, it is roughly following a structure, and you can have slightly different structures for different set of papers, but that is something you have to do now. 15 days are left, and I've told that around 7, 8, 9 days you can still spend on your optional. Now with political science, the best thing is that GS2 के साथ overlap है, and this also helped me. Okay, so when I got decent marks in my, let's say optional overall, my marks in GS were also helped because GS2 का overlap होता था. So this also helped me in getting interviews call, right? Because essay I used to score well, political science I used to score well, and then GS also used to take care of itself because of the relative overlap. So that is also one thing you can target. Let's say if you're less on time, go very hard on your optional, and you will also get good marks in GS2. Okay, तो वो करो. इनफैक्ट अब आजकल देखोगे आप, तो you will see a lot of toppers, and also they use a lot of content from optionals to your GS. Okay, so you can also use that. Don't be shy in that sense. GS1 में भी women movements, environmental movements, बाकी जगहों पे भी use करो content को. Even in modern history, you can use content from paper 1B. So again, use these things. Again, coming back to what we were discussing. Number one, the choice has to be very good. Your sections have to be fairly well done. Third is that starting के जो 10 markers हैं, write it with a lot of due diligence. Okay, of course, then you transition to your 20 markers, or overall have a structure and a method, or let's say a method to what you write. Again, what can happen, and in fact we're seeing कभी का trend change होता है, the paper trend changes. Sometimes they ask you difficult questions. Okay, but if you follow this, you will get good marks, because again I'm telling you, there's an element known as scaling. ठीक है, scaling में क्या होगा? Even if the paper is tough for you, if you've performed relatively well, and let's say you were supposed to get 130 marks, scale होके 145 हो जाता है. And this also perhaps would have happened with me in my case, because when I got 162 marks, it is not an absolute figure. I was not able to attempt in that case. There was a specific question on an environmental movement in Tuticorin. I was not able to do that. छोड़ दिया था मैंने. And there was one that was a 15 marker, by the way, and then there was a 10 marker which I just wrote perhaps one paragraph, and still I was able to get, because overall I assume that my quality would have been excellent overall. ठीक है, तो वो छोड़ने के बाद भी मार्क्स मिलते हैं, तो दैट डज नॉट मीन कि आप जो बहुत टफ क्वेश्चंस आएंगे, इफ यू आर नॉट एबल टू अटेम्प्ट, यू आर नॉट गेटिंग मार्क्स. हाउएवर योर अटेम्प्ट शुड ऑलवेज बी टू मैक्सिमाइज. अभी भी you have some time, and still, even if when I wrote multiple mains, even till the last point I had issues in completing the paper, and I think many of us have. So agar known content, if I'm not able to write 10 marks, 15 marks, I know I'll be losing out on 5 6 marks, and you never know whether that is the gap that you're not able to clear mains or interview or get a desired services. Fine, जितना push कर सकते हो push करो, लिखो भी. I think perhaps around the first week of September, many people would also want to write the full tests of, let's say, PSIR, paper 1, paper 2. Do that. That is very helpful, because we are usually in the mode, अच्छा मेरे को paper 1A आता है, 1A मैंने लिख दिया, 1B I know I wrote it. But it's also a different ball game when you attempt the paper, entire paper in 3 hours, 2 hours break, and again 3 hours. Extremely exhausting it is. Okay, your hand will literally pain, of course. If you've already written your mates, you already know that. But वो exercise और drill करके देखो, ठीक है? Many things you'll forget in the exam, but the sheer hard work, the practice of writing these things down 1 week before the actual exam will always help you. ठीक है, वो करो. And one more thing I'll say, of course, you also have 5 days remaining. ठीक है, वो आप अभी अच्छे से use करोगे, but still have some a lot of jottings, things you have written, highlighted, so you're able to use them in those 5 days. Okay, I in my case had all these things handy. I had a lot of flashcard, I had a lot of micro notes, and I have a habit of recording my, let's say, important points. And let's say I'll give you a live demo. ठीक है, let's say I want to revise Rawls theory of state. ठीक है, अब रॉल्स की थ्योरी ऑफ स्टेट पे हमेशा सवाल आएगा, नॉट जस्ट वन बट मोर देन वन. What is justice? I'll have a definition for that. Simple definition of justice: a comparative or comparison between Plato's justice, or let's say Plato's architectonic notion of justice, and Rawls' notion of justice. Okay. Second, what are the foundational elements of Rawls' justice? जितने भी keywords होंगे, veil of ignorance, original position, lexical order, everything I'll have it. ठीक. Then, why is Rawls' justice so important? So I'll also understand the issues of liberal word order. Okay, and how the social liberalism of Rawls tries to maintain both, that it gives maximum choice to the individual, but still it gives choice to disadvantaged sections. In fact, it creates avenues for affirmative action. Okay, difference principle basically. और उसको भी मैं और illustrate करूंगा. I'll give you contemporary examples. बट दैट इज नॉट ऑल, ऑफ कोर्स आई हैव टू राइट कम्युनिटेरियन क्रिटिक्स, ऑफ कोर्स वो सारे नाम हमें याद होने चाहिए. This year also they went ahead, one step ahead. They asked you entitlement theory of justice, right? In fact, जब आप criticism पढ़ते हो and when you read about libertarians etc., you also read about the entitlement theory of justice. So the point is you have to, अब ये बोलने में मुझे hardly it took 60 seconds. Perhaps to revise for you with the keywords, with the content, it should not take more than 10 minutes. Have those small, let's say, blocks in your day. If I immediately say rights को revise करना है, rights is not that big a topic, but every year you'll get a 20 marker from that. Rights are this, rights are that, inalienable, just, what are natural rights, what are divine rights, comparison between them. So the point is, you can have these things at your fingertips. This is just paper 1A. You can do the same exercise for 1B. What is India's vision for new world order? 7 points, tell me quickly, right? So इस तरह से you have to now rapidly recall, and for that you can have mnemonics. I used to have a lot of mnemonics. पूरे के पूरे 8 पॉइंट एक साथ मेरे को याद आ जाते थे. तो निमोनिक्स अगर प्री में नहीं भी मदद करते हैं, मेंस में डेफिनेटली करते हैं. ठीक है. I in my, like, let's say in the 15-day strategy video, I asked you to make charts. I used to make charts for political science as well. If you guys want me to at least help you, I can have a, let's say, live session, very short session of how to make a revision chart. Everything at one place for you. Okay, I can do that. You can just mention that in the comment section, or perhaps I can share snippets from what I all, let's say, already had. वो मैं कर सकता हूँ. In my channel, I think I had shared few of my copies and few of my answers of paper 1 section A specifically because you guys had asked. Okay, but that said, all these things you can use for paper 1 section A as well as for, let's say, paper 1 and paper 2 both. दोनों में there's not huge difference. In fact, in the last 2 or 3 years, paper 1 has become difficult to score, but paper 2 has become relatively, it is not that non-conventional. Sometimes if you see the papers of 2017, 2018, it was difficult to score marks in paper 2, right? कभी भी global south पे या let's say कोई particular body पे they used to ask a 20 marker, which made the choice very difficult, right? So all these things said, again I will say, uh, have a habit of writing. Okay, because the more you write, you have structures. और writing का ये मतलब नहीं पूरे हर दिन टेस्ट लिखो. Even if you write 2 answers on political science, on any 2 topics, it's great. Okay, if you're not able to do so, still the best thing is to, let's say, think it in your head. ओके, रैंडम सोचो. जैसे अभी भी आप लोग मेरे से पूछते हो कि सर हाउ टू एंटिसिपेट इफ देयर इज अ बाउंसर क्वेश्चन इन पीएसआईआर, कैसा होगा. तो अभी भी लेट्स से कोई भी, if a question is based on, let's say, a quote of Karl Marx, okay, or anybody, I think this year also you had quotes on estates of property, estates of power, estates of liberty kind of a quote, right? Or perhaps you had something on revolution. Okay, so यहाँ पे, in all of this, whatever you know about that theory, write it in a structured format. It is better than, of course, leaving that question, right? तो ये चीज़ें करो. उसके बाद again, have a habit of creating some mental frameworks while you think about a question, and try to think in a comparative perspective. When I gave you examples, again, when I said Rawls, I mentioned Plato, and not just Plato. This year they went ahead. They asked you to compare between Ambedkar and, let's say, Plato. So, sorry, Ambedkar and Rawls, because they wanted to compare the notion of justice. Again, they can go one step ahead. They can again take a very prominent thinker, उसको किसी और से compare कर देंगे, किसी को किसी और से कर देंगे. तो comparative perspective is needed. In fact, that is why you have paper 2A में comparative politics, right? That also helps. So do that. I also had a fairly decent writing, although I'm not saying you guys should have a decent writing. That also perhaps helped me. So combination of these factors, I'll just quickly summarize so that you guys can take the maximum value. Number one, I made, at least on that day, I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to make good choices of the 5 questions to attempt in a paper. You have to be smart about it. Number one, 10 markers को अच्छे से लिखो, because that will help you create a good impression. आफ्टर दैट व्हेन यू चूज द ब्लॉक, उसमें देखो 20 15 15 में आप बेस्ट क्या कर पाओगे. इफ यू कैन डू 20 15 बेटर, देन गो फॉर दैट इंस्टेड ऑफ 15 15 वाले. ठीक है. देन follow the structure, have a good introduction if possible. Body, keywords, all these things should be at your fingertips. Again, one more tip I have, that small phrases or keywords you should definitely add as much as possible in the answer, because you are, let's say, rewarded for the use of academic language. Academic language लिखने के फायदे होते हैं. कार्ल मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन है, रॉल्स का क्वेश्चन है, डायरेक्टली यूज द phrases and statement instead of writing everything by your own. Okay, the more you do that, the better it is. Okay, and there is also a way. For example, when I used to write almost every paragraph, I will have one or two quotes of those thinkers. until philosopher become kings, okay, something like that. The history of the word is just, let's say, when I have to elaborate on dialectical materialism, though it is just like something, more keywords, better phrases, गुड आंसर्स, एंड सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है लास्ट में भाई पेपर पूरा कर लो जितना हो सकता है, ओके। समटाइम्स फोकसिंग टू मच ऑन क्वालिटी हेल्प्स अस, और इनफैक्ट डज नॉट हेल्प अस टू राइट गुड आंसर्स, बिकॉज आप इतना ज़्यादा सोच रहे हो कि मेरे को अच्छा अच्छा करना है, इट विल टेक यू मोर टाइम टू राइट. So number one, of course, has to be write the entire paper. Okay, if you're able to, let's have these points which I've just told you, nothing like it. Okay, isko karo. Similarly, you can go for paper two as well. Okay, for paper two and for all these things on my channel, at least we Team Platonic are trying to post some content for you. Some of the updates, for example, the recent G20 SAR ke sari summits related jo updates hain, some of these things we are posting, and we are, let's say, hoping that questions come from these areas. Some IR related topics have already been posted. If you want to have a look, please do that. Again, for political science, if you feel you need my help, or at least any of my assistance, or perhaps you want a pep talk, or perhaps a review of a copy, etc., you can let me know. In the Telegram channel, you can definitely contact me. My name is Amritansh, and I think my ID, etc., is already there, right? Because for political science, I think, because I've given so much of time to this subject during my preparation, I can definitely add value. All right. With that said, I would hope the best. आप अच्छे से time करिए, time utilize करिए. Although the time is less, but again, it is up to us how much time we utilize and how much time can we devote. Fine. So please, let's say, keep me posted if there is anything. And other than that, wish you the very best. I'll also post one more video the moment your, let's say, paper GS 4, 3 and 4 are done. So how to utilize those last 5 days. वो भी बहुत ज़रूरी है. Which is also a make or break, because those, let's say, if you're able to put in 12 to 13 hours per day in those 5 days, again, drastic improvement can happen, provided you know how to approach each day. Okay, so I'll also meet you then through a video of this sorts, and I would definitely hope that you guys clear your prelims. And उसको चलो उतनी दूर भी नहीं जाते, but at least कोशिश करो, write good answers. Okay, create an impact. All right, that said, thank you so much, hope to see you soon, all the very best.